What do you think are the problems with the Lokpal Bill?
See, I actually think we need to look... See, fundamentally, let's start from here. The whole... this whole thing around the Lokpal, Jan Lokpal, has been that the government has to pass this bill. The bill has already been prepared. The bill has to go through Parliament. Nobody should have any discussion on it. And the standing committee should not hear it. No other part of civil society has any role to play in this because it's already been prepared and it just has to go through. Now, I find it very interesting that how many people have read the bill? Actually, there's a very interesting interview with Arvind Kejriwal where he says that most people, when they asked, they said, we are not interested in reading the bill. We just want to give our moher for Anna. So this is then this whole movement is not about the bill. The movement is about something else. I am not political enough to tell you what it is about. I don't know. But it's not about the bill. And as a lawyer, if you're a nerd and you're a law person and you're a nerd, when someone says something is about the bill, you'll pick up the bill. Which is the difference, I think, between people who enjoyed their day out in the sun and people who are nerdy and sit inside and read whatever. And that bill is a fascinating document. It's a document that says that, it's a document that is created in a situation where the creators of the bill are advancing the cause of dealing with corruption. So basically you have to be able to deal with corruption and put the whole thing out. So to do that, what is the reason that there is so much corruption? Because there is a lot of impunity everywhere and people can't be caught. Protection against prosecution, investigation doesn't happen, control of investigating agencies, all these result in these institutions becoming corrupt over time, whichever it is, whether it's the executive or the judiciary or Parliament. And Parliament is inactive a lot of the time. There is no way that we can control any of this. So from the lower to the higher bureaucracy and from all these institutions, you have a problem. So to deal with this bill creates a structure that has legislative powers, parliamentary powers, judicial powers, all of it rolled into one, with complete control over every one of these agencies that it creates.
Basically, judge, jury, executioner.
Judge, jury, executioner, and absolute powerist. Because the idea is, and I think Prashant has said this, and I understand where that is coming from. It's a genuine interest that if you're going to set up a Lokpal, it must be a Lokpal that is insulated from influence from various institutions. So nobody should be able to challenge it on its functioning. But the problem is that also means that you're creating an institution that becomes impervious to being challenged for corruption. Because, or for abuse of power.
It's like who will watch the watchmen?
Yeah. And it's more than that, because here you're saying this is not even the watchman, this is the all-powerful, omniscient, whatever creature sitting there. And how do we find this? It's fascinating because there are two, the whole bill is interesting, but there are two clauses there which kind of capture the mood of what this Lokpal will be. So you have the investigating agency, say they said CBI is under political control and therefore you cannot allow the CBI to be there. So relocate it within the Lokpal. So the Lokpal can appoint the investigator. It will supervise the investigator. It will monitor the investigator. It will direct the investigator. And when the investigation has been, and it will sack the investigator, because those powers are also demotion of what do you call that, for firing. Everything is with the Lokpal. So that whole agency is going to be held in the clutches of the Lokpal. And after the agency is finished its job, the Lokpal will decide whether to prosecute or to initiate the kind of initiate action like removal, suspension, whatever of the officer. All that will be. So you have the investigating agency completely in its control. Then the Lokpal has the power to decide what kind of punishment and what kind of treatment should be given to them. Then, and this is really fascinating, I've never heard, I don't think anywhere in the world you'll have a provision like this. It says that for corruption, the punishment can be anywhere between 6 months and lifetime. Okay? Now how is the judge or whoever it is who's going to decide? How are they going to decide what to what to award in this band. So they say the Lokpal will fix what the punishment should be for different kinds of punishments and different gradations within corruption. And the Lokpal will not only do that at one time, it will revise it from time to time. So today if you decide one kind of corruption is really the worst thing that can happen, that may have minimum of 10 years sentence. But tomorrow you may find that no, it is not this, it's some other kind of corruption that's even worse. So this will get downgraded to 5 years and somebody else will get 14 years or whatever. It is unheard of that you're going to have the penalty regime being dictated by an agency that is supposed to be watching and trying to deal with corruption. That is, it will be the lawmaker, not just making law in relation to procedure and whatever, but also of what crime will be punished with how much sentence. And we are talking about imprisonment here. And we are talking about sentences that are real, if it's life sentence. So that's one extraordinary power with it. Then there are some interesting things that it does. It's got this thing called a complaints authority. Because the question that was asked was, what about the other officers of the Lokpal? What if they become corrupt? So they said, yeah, we are going to deal with that. So we'll have a complaints authority. Now this complaints authority will have retired or sitting judges or whatever. I think retired judges. And 2 retired judges, 2 bureaucrats, retired bureaucrats, and some member of civil society. They will constitute the complaints authority. So when there is any complaint against any other member of the or official of the Lokpal, other than the 11 members who constitute the core Lokpal, then it will go before this complaints authority. And the complaints authority will then give its decision. And these are judges. So judges are to be subservient to the Lokpal. Given the way in which judges operate, I don't see anyone agreeing to be part of this. But anyway, then for an appeal from the decision of the complaints authority, the Lokpal will decide by regulation what kind of appellate powers and what kind of appellate authority will be set up. So they are going to, it's like an extraordinary thing that they are planning to do. And I'm not able to take it seriously. I don't think anybody who's making a law like this would have seriously intended that they actually want this law should be passed, it should be implemented. It's too absurd to believe that any rational person would actually think that such a law could come into existence. So my own understanding of this law is that it is not about the law. It's not about the law. It cannot be about this law. I refuse to believe that people that we know are this absurd in their rationality. I don't know if absurd and rationality can go together. So and you think about this also, they've said Lok Ayukta is a non-negotiable. Now if Parliament had decided, oh my God, we are being brought to our knees, so we are being brought down to our knees, so we might as well pass this law. If they passed it, the last 2.5 lines of the bill says that Lokayukta, provisions relating to Lokayuktas should also be made in the same way in which Lokpal has been set up. That's it. So if there was that level of seriousness that you actually want to Lokayukta, you can't do it, then at least there would have been a draft. There isn't even a draft. So I think we are missing something. I think one of the things that's happened which made this whole Lokpal and corruption thing, Jan Lokpal, go the way it did, is that nobody bothered to read the bill. And there is nothing happier than a state of ignorance. So you are in a situation where there is a bill, but nobody really looks at it. One of the interesting things in the India Against Corruption website, you have a thing where they're asking for people to give their comments, and they have they have the 2.2 version of the bill, and they say it just takes 3 minutes. You should read that. I'm not able to recall the exact words, but it takes 3 minutes to contribute to a corrupt-free society. So it says, basically give your endorsement of what we are saying. If it takes only 3 minutes to read that bill, basically it means don't read the bill. It's not relevant. So I actually think that for the first time in all these years that I've been reading law, I've read a bill. For the first time, the law that is being talked about tells you not. It's not the politics that tells you about the law. The law is telling you about the politics. And the politics is not about the making of this law. It cannot be. In the way in which this has been structured, and when you think about what was said soon after Parliament buckled and gave whatever it did, the next day the first thing you hear is that what is the first non-negotiable that's talked about? Surveillance. Telephone tapping. It is a non-negotiable. Lokpal must have the power to tap everybody's telephones and to put everyone under surveillance. There's a certain non-seriousness about this. It is possible that different people have different agendas and how they think that ultimately these institutions can work. But the Jan Lokpal Bill can't be taken seriously in that context. You should just read it to see how sentence after sentence after sentence. I'll give you another instance. They say the Lokpal will have the power to appoint judicial officers, prosecutors, and senior counsel. Does it even mean anything? So maybe it is in somebody's head that it's a good idea for the Lokpal to appoint judicial officers, prosecutors, and senior counsel. What does it mean to appoint a senior counsel? There is no application. So I can't believe that. And it's interesting that in the 3-4 rounds of consultations that happened in April, nothing got picked up. I think the only thing that really...
And you were a part of that consultation?
I was a part of 3 out of the 4. I wasn't there at the 4th. There was one around the 25th of April which I missed. And I was there again on the 5th of June when Forum of Media Professionals organized a public discussion, debate. There was no debate because everyone said their say and that was it. There was no question of absorbing what is being raised as issues. Now, if you really want a good law, you may not agree with people, but you listen to what they say seriously. It didn't happen. It was like, acha, you say what you want, but, for instance, one of the things that was raised was when Shekhar was saying about transparency and putting everything up on the net. That everything you pick up, you've got to put up on the net so that all of us as the public are going to be the watchdogs of the Lokpal. For that, you go for a search and seizure in somebody's house. You may pick up nothing at all. You may find that no case is made of it. But if they close the case, then they have to put everything up. Or if you charge sheet, everything that you get, if you suppose you recommend for prosecution, all the documentation that you find has to be put up on the website. So we were saying that, why would you want all that is relevant to a corruption charge you may put up. But you can't put up everything. For instance, if you get a medical record that says that somebody is HIV positive, but you want that put up. And Mr. Shanti Bhushan actually said, yes, I don't mind. Put it up on the website. And I was thinking, many of us may not mind. It blights people's lives. And it's not that trivial. So there are some visions in this which explain how the creators of this bill have worked. But if anyone tries to convince me that this bill was seriously meant as the objective,
there's a problem in that.
There's no problem. Not all.
And what are the differences between the 3 versions of the bill? One is the Jan Lokpal, the government version of Lokpal, and Aruna Roy and civil society. They have got their own version. So what are which is the better one of the lot, or in legal terms, how is that?
See, the NCPRI version is not really a version of law. What they've done is they divided this into a basket of measures, which is 5 sectors. So 4 of them already have bills pending in Parliament. So they are talking about altering it, keep on amending it till it comes to a quality which is worth passing. So the negotiation is about, there's a whistleblowers bill that's already in Parliament. There's a Lokpal bill that's already in Parliament. What are the other areas? There's 2 other areas. Judicial accountability bill is already in Parliament. What you don't have in Parliament is the grievances. And what you have in that is there are state governments, states which have passed this Right to Service Act. In many states you have them. They are inadequate, but they can form some kind of a basis. Basically, they've said that grievances you have to find a mechanism, but the others they are already there in Parliament and you have to work. So that's that is about engaging with it's like a discussion method of keeping on strengthening a bill. That's what happened with the RTA. RTA was a fascinating. So they're basically saying, let's capture these bills and convert them into people, civil society oriented bills. So that's a very different thing. That's about forming a basis of discussion. It's not that they have bills. They are using what they are contributing to the lawmaking as a basis of discussion. The government bill is actually quite interesting because you realize that the government is incapable on their own without being put under extreme pressure to relinquish control. They can't do it. Despite that, so it's funny reading that bill therefore, because they did it after the negotiations with the 5 people, and so they've got a few provisions in there which have absorbed what they've said. And I think the most interesting thing in that is how they've given up the power of sanction for prosecution. That is like incredible. That, without being brought on their knees, they wouldn't have done it. Because they've basically said that till now, the power to decide whether whether a person should be prosecuted or not, who's part of their establishment, can only be decided by themselves. Now they've said now that the Lokpal can decide that, which is like a big handing over of power. And I think we need never to forget this. The government has said it once, we should hold them to it. The Jan Lokpal Bill says exactly the same thing, which is a tragedy. Because that only means that the power shifts from the other establishment to the Lokpal. This doesn't change the nature of that power. So it's a problem. And we have the torture bill experience, where the torture bill, they've got it through standing committee now, where the power doesn't reside in one place. The executive, who knows the officer, will first make an assessment of whether he should be prosecuted or not. If it is a yes, then the prosecution will proceed. If it's a no, the executive authority has to give reasons why not. And then the court can judge whether those reasons are acceptable or not. So 2 agencies come in place of one, which means absolute power gets diluted. It's a very important principle, and I would have thought that the civil society component would understand that and not merely try to shift power from one place to another, but actually dilute state power. So that's the... Other than that, it's like... I'm not able to take the Jan Lokpal Bill seriously, because it's really too full of contradictions and impossibilities. More than contradiction, is full of impossibilities.
And does it infringe upon some constitutional provisions of right of individuals in the society? I mean, the Jan Lokpal Bill.
Jan Lokpal Bill, in terms of constitutionality, it has a tremendous impact on the basic structure of separation of powers. See, there's no such thing as absolute separation of powers, but there are separation of functions which are very logically set. So, if judiciary is supposed to do something and the Lokpal takes it over, or for instance, the parliament is supposed to pass law and the Lokpal says, no, I will pass my own law, you go away. This is fundamental to a constitutional structure. You can't change that. You can't say that I will appoint people who will judge cases. You can't say that. You can't keep it all within you. You can't say I will pass regulations which go beyond the parent legislation. Appellate authority, you control the creation of appellate authority. You create who will be, you control who will be in it. It's like it's against the basic structure. And the logic of separation of powers is very strong. To my mind, this idea of transparency that has come in of the individual is also unconstitutional. But that is still up for debate. It's not just about privacy, it's about dignity, it's about personal security, all that is at stake. I think this does violate all of that. But that's still up for debate.
Now, according to you, the major concern why people have joined into this is because they are fed up of corruption. And they think of the Lokpal Bill as one-shot cure for all corruption. But according to you, in your legal parlance or in terms of bills or whatever, is there something else that perhaps can solve corruption? Because this seems that this will probably create another level where corruption might seep in. So is there any other way that you see?
I'm not even sure. I think that people came out onto the streets because they were opposed to corruption. I think corruption is one of the manifestations of a larger malaise where people in positions of power have stopped, forget about being answerable to the people, they stopped even talking to them. There's such a sense of exclusion that people have from all these structures of power and authority and control and whatever, that it's like if anybody can tell the state where to get off, you want to join them and say get off. So I think if the government doesn't understand that for it to be part of a democratic polity, for it to be relevant in a democratic polity, it has to have a relationship with the demos. See, I think since 1991, since the reform started, the government is very comfortable talking to corporations. It's very comfortable talking to an American establishment or some other establishment. It's become, and a large part of it has become a technocratic vision of the state. None of this has to do with the people. So basically people are being told, you be consumers and whatever is thrown at you, be prepared to receive it. But there is no communication at all with the people. I mean, it just simply doesn't exist. There is no acknowledgement that people are what this country is made of. So the current state already treats people either as a hindrance or as a subject. And nobody is going to sit down for too long taking that. So I'm not sure how many people have it articulated, but you can see that reflected in the way in which there is exaltation when persons who hold the authority of the state are brought down. And I think that's the most important part of this. That people got, whatever the cause, they got an opportunity to tell the state that, you know what, we are here. And that's been an important thing. I don't think it has anything to do with the bill. I don't think that's the reason people didn't bother to read the bill. It's not because they just blindly gave support to either Anna or to anybody else. It's that they were there to make a statement to the government. And if the government still hasn't learned to hear it, they're in deep trouble.
But just in case of all the people who went there, like you rightly said, wanted to bring the government to their knees, but just in case a very small percentage out of them are really serious about fighting corruption and doing something for the country, what option do they have as individuals beside your cliche of one vote for democracy? What else can they do?
See, corruption is a far deeper problem in our country than many other problems are. I mean, when I was watching that, I was thinking, there are many such things that have become institutionalized problems in which many of us participate. Take torture. I may not torture anybody myself, but when I have something lost in my house, if I were to go and just tell the cop that this is what's happened and I allow the cop to pick up my maid or whoever works in my house, I'm contributing to that torture. I turn my face away if I do it. Then I'm complicit in that torture. Everybody knows it happens in every police station, but we don't want to think about it when we use it. I think these are, you think about the abuses in all our, in Chhattisgarh, for instance. Who doesn't know it's happening? Of course we know it's happening. There's a pragmatism that allows us to allow it to happen somewhere else. Do you think the Northeast, till a few years ago people didn't know that, many people didn't even know what you were referring to when you said Northeast. That's no longer true. And people know about the kind of abuses that the kind of oppression that people are experiencing. Of course people know about it now. It's been written about everywhere. But we turn our eyes away from it because we don't want to deal with it. Corruption, I think, is in that category. And unless we face up to this, that corruption is actually cancerous and that it's not just an arrangement, it's going to be a very different thing. But I honestly think that there is a difference between, in the 70s and 80s we used to be told that corruption is one form of socialism, where a person who gets less wages can take from a guy who is very rich and say that, you give me this and then I will do the work for you. You look at it in the past 20 years, I mean, it's not to endorse that, but I mean, it's not to say that that's okay, but there used to be a certain levity to that process where, acha yaar, 10 rupees de do, poor fellow, he has nothing. Today you find that, I was quite shocked when the Prime Minister actually stood up to say that the economic reforms has reduced corruption. And I'm thinking, excuse me, all your fellows are sitting in jail because of big ticket corruption. And there is, and you're talking about it having come down. the stakes are so much higher now that you can't equate the everyday corruption with that level of corruption. And the basic things that you need to do away with corruption. See, it's possible for you to be corrupt, for you to be not corrupt, if you can use the system to do what you want it to do. But for people who can't do that, the only way you can do it is by saying, "Acha, yahan par kuch de do." You think about price rise. How are you going to deal with small ticket corruption when people simply don't have enough to buy their dal and their whatever? So if there is some bargaining power that they have, they use it. Now you don't want to deal with the systemic issue at all. You only want to deal with that small man who's picking up money. So my hope is that with the big guys getting caught and with RTI having done such remarkable things in the recent past, I see RTI as a very, very strong tool. The difference between Lokpal and RTI for me is fundamentally this. That RTI said every one of us can take our destiny into our hands to the extent that we are able to find the energies. Lokpal says you become a subject of mine. I will protect you from corruption. So if the Lokpal doesn't succeed, I can't do anything for myself. That's the fundamental difference. If you do not democratize control over corruption, you cannot control corruption.
And ironically, the anger against corruption is probably because a lot of cases have been exposed because of RTI.
Yes, absolutely. I totally see it like that.